Are you finding that you have very, very high labor costs in your franchise? You do want to listen in for the next few minutes. Do remember to share this broadcast, and as always, state where you're joining in from. And if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or send me a message as well. Labor cost rules, it happens to a lot of persons, a lot of CEOs, business owners, entrepreneurs. You're looking at your labor costs and you're like, what is happening? What can I do to control this? Why is it so high? So, one of the things with labor costs, it is important to understand the components of labor costs. I find a lot of times as CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners, there's that misunderstanding about the full makeup of labor costs. So labor costs is not just the number of hours or that salary that you're paying your team member. You have to think about when it comes to labor costs, there are other costs. So you do have payroll taxes. That's a part of your labor cost. You do have statutory days. You have to pay more for those. There are also where you might have training. Training is a big cost. So you most times you have a new team member coming in, you have to be paying them for training. And so if we take that step back, it is important that you have your training process, ironed out, a system that is effective. So if you're not thinking about, okay, is the training too overwhelming? They after they're finished training, they don't want to stay. That's lost dollars there. So you've already invested in training and that person is gone. You have to retrain again. So training costs, that is a part of your labor cost, those hours that you're paying. So you want to bear in mind that as a part of your makeup of your labor cost, that's going to be a factor. And what's going to happen is that you're going to have labor costs paying those monies out and you don't have a corresponding sale. So there's that mismatch, right? So review your training process to see if there are any opportunities for improving your training costs and the training process that you use to train your team members, new ones coming in. Another thing with labor costs is you have to not look at labor costs in isolation, like, okay, I paid 100,000 out for this payroll or 200,000. You need to look at labor costs in relation to your sales, right? It is important to use that key metric, find that key metric, that correlation. What is your labor cost compared to your sales? That is very important. What is your labor cost as a percentage of your profits too? That gives you deeper insight, because what happens at times is that you could be there saying, okay, I don't even think my labor costs are that high. And what you find is when we dive more and see what is your labor cost compared to your sales, you realize, okay, there's a lot of inefficiencies. There are opportunities for improving your labor costs, reducing your labor cost ratio there. So labor cost is usually a huge component of the overall cost of your business. And another thing, especially when you're in the franchise world, labor cost is something that you can modify. A lot of times some other expenses are fixed. You can't play with those. There's no room for changing those. However, labor cost is something that one of those expenses, you can find ways to reduce it, to improve it. So that is why it is important as CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, you understand the components of labor costs, and you also understand how is it that I can improve my labor costs, reduce my labor costs, especially compared to your sales. So another thing, I'll throw this last thing in. When it comes to labor costs, sometimes you are not taking into account when you get a team member on, what are those other costs? It's not that they just get into your store, into your office. You have to think about uniform. You have to think about benefits, right? There are insurance, or you might give them certain benefits, RSPs. Those are other benefits you might throw in for your team members. So you want to make sure you might need a new computer or new tools. So you want to make sure you are aware of all the costs that are related to your team members to ensure that you are accounting and managing them properly, accounting for them and managing them properly, controlling them properly. Because if you're not doing that, then that's another way that money leaks, cash is leaking from your business. You are not on top of, your labor costs, what makes it up, what can you change, how to modify it. So it might be a slow time in your business. How do you cut hours, right? Think about those things when it comes to labor costs. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to continue the conversation. Do remember to share this broadcast. Yes. And if you have any questions, as usual, let me know in the comments and we'll talk later. Signing off in 3, 2, 1. Bye, guys.